the universality of struggle itself. There is also a central paradox to this struggling position. The position of struggle does not mean the position of a particular identity and the abandonment of the universal notion of truth. The abandonment of universal notion of truth goes very well with multiculturalist politics, where you can say everybody has the right to narrate its own version of truth, there is no global truth. No, our position should be there is universal truth. There always is one universal truth of a certain situation. But this truth is accessible only from a specific, partial, engaged in the struggle standpoint. So it's not that we arrive at universal truth by abstracting from our particular engagement, from our particular interests, the idea being each of us has its own interests, positions, but the truth of a situation emerges when we can step, as it were, outside ourselves and look at the situation more objectively, the way it really is. No, on the contrary, we should fully assume the paradox of universal truth being accessible only through a partial, engaged position. This, I think, is more precious than ever to maintain today. And this is the reason why, at the social level, I think, we should cling to the notion of collective as it was till now practiced in three forms: messianic religious collectives, revolutionary parties, and psychoanalytic communities. They both share, all three of them, they share precisely this same notion of universality accessible only through an engaged, struggling, subjective position. This politics of pure difference is opposed today by another, I would call it, politics of the real, but the real of the superego, in precisely the sense I already talked about, that is to say, superego injunction, the obscene virtual superego injunction to enjoy. So how does this superego injunction function today in the hegemonic mode of social identification? To put it in extremely simplified terms, the old functioning of ethics was that of moderation. The ultimate task of ethics was to moderate it, like do it but not excessively, eat, drink, not too much, sex, not too much. It was the ethics of the proper measure. Today, I claim a different kind of ethics is emerging. An ethics which, on the one hand, allows you limitless consumption, no moderation, go to the end, but why? Because the object in itself is already deprived of its dangerous substance, as it were. The whole series of products that we find today on the market, decaf coffee, beer without alcohol, sugar without sugar, and so on and so on. That is to say, the product where you get the effect, but deprived of its potentially dangerous substance. So that today, the injunction is no longer drink coffee, but moderately. It is have as much coffee as you want, because coffee is already in itself decaffeinated coffee. Maybe the best, slightly tasteless, but what the hell, why not? The best metaphor for this product is something that I saw 2-3 years ago in Los Angeles. It's the paradox of a chocolate laxative. Of course, chocolate being that which gives you constipation. With the publicity, I remember it, still constipated, not a problem, eat more of our chocolate. So that's the paradox, that the chocolate is already its own remedy, in a kind of almost Hegelian direct coincidence of the opposites. So why is this interesting? Precisely because I claim it's not limited only to phenomena of commodities. what interests me is how we can locate the same logic, also the same paradoxical logic of a product being its own counter effect already, and also within the social field. For example, let's take the big topic of tolerance. What does it mean? I claim it has precisely the structure of chocolate laxative. That is to say, tolerance is a mode of appearance of its own opposite, of intolerance. Because what does it mean, tolerance, today? It means tolerate the differences, which again means don't harass me. Tolerance means tolerate me, means don't harass me. What does it mean, don't harass me? It means precisely don't come too close to me. If you come too close to me with your excessive enjoyment, you disturb me, you harass me. So we have then this idea that practically everything can be a form of harassment. I look at you, it's potentially sexual harassment. I speak too loudly, it's verbal harassment, whatever. Everything, every over proximity of another human being can be potentially a form of harassment. And I think that this fear of harassment is precisely fundamental form of intolerance today. And so, again, I claim that when we talk about tolerance today, it means precisely tolerance as avoiding harassment, which means intolerance. It means let's tolerate each other, again, which means let's keep at a proper distance from each other. Yet another chocolate laxative phenomenon, isn't it the way we deal with wealth today? The exemplary figure today for me here is somebody like George Soros. Half the day he engages in the most ruthless financial exploitations, ruining the lives of hundreds of thousands, even millions. The other half, he just gives part of it back. So the morning is chocolate, the afternoon is laxative, like, involved in all these human aid programs and so on, political democratization and so on and so on. So again, instead of simply not engaged in ruthless speculation, he does it, but then includes counteraction. And even more radically, is it not exactly the same with war today? I think that Ulrich Beck, the German sociologist, was well justified in inventing the term militarist pacifism or humanitarian militarism. For what goes on today, where all the wars are declared as wars for peace. It's not only that their ultimate goal is defined as to bring peace into Iraq, to remove the threat of war, and so on and so on. It's even more radically. It is that the war operation itself resembles more and more a kind of humanitarian intervention to help the people there. If you read, for example, the recent justification of attack on Iraq, it's not so much that Iraq was attacked in order to remove the threat to the Western nation of Saddam. It was in order to help the Iraqi people, and so on and so on. No wonder then that the ultimate chocolate laxative, no wonder that the concentration camps, as George Agamben claims, the typical exemplary case of a 20th century collective, has precisely these both aspects. Again, chocolate laxative structure. The aspect of isolating the enemy, Guantanamo or whatever, and the aspect of concentrating people in order to provide them with humanitarian aid. So, what this means are two things. First, I don't think that it is justified to talk today about consumption. We live in a society of consumption and so on. On the contrary, I claim, we consume less than ever, if consuming means taking the risk, really opening yourself. Which is why, incidentally, we are so afraid of smoking. I claim it's not simply medical results and so on. What is so terrifying in smoking is somebody really consuming the smoke with all the dangers this involves. I think that the true consumers today are drug addicts, chain smokers, and so on. And they are the figures of horror today, if anything. Again, the structure is that of chocolate laxative, which is why we are all looking, even at this level, for products which would be already a kind of decaf coffee. Which is why I think marijuana is so popular, because it's kind of decaf opium, de facto, opium without opium. You can have it, but deprived of its dangerous substance. So, to conclude this brief reflection, I would say that today the fundamental, as it were, ethical injunction, the injunction society bombards us with, is no longer the